All right, so now we're going to get into the basics of budgeting. So, first and foremost, what is a budget? A budget is roughly an estimate of income and expenditure for a set period of time. So, what that means is you take how much money you're going to be making and how much money you're going to be spending over a period of time, whether that be month, tri-monthly, whatever makes most sense to you. To make an effective budget, you must understand your income and expenditures. So, you must understand how much you're making and what you're going to be spending money on. And one thing you'll learn is budgets are an extremely effective way to manage your personal finances. Proper management of your personal finances can lead to financial freedom, which some say is one of the best feelings ever. So, we're going to teach you guys how to properly budget and get that little bit of financial freedom. So, first and foremost, you should understand your income, the difference between a gross income, which is how much you make, versus a net income, which is what you actually get. So you can have a gross income of, let's say, $5,000 a month, but you'll have some deductions from taxes. They'll deduct state and federal income tax, and there'll also be deductions made for Social Security and Medicare. So these deductions must be accounted for in your budget. And so your gross income may be $5,000, but after all these deductions, your net income may be closer to about $3,800 to $3,900. So you should base your budget off your net income because that's how much money you're going to actually have to spend. So next and foremost, you should understand your expenses. How useful is a budget if it doesn't account for every expense? And it may seem silly, but count every toothbrush and everything you'll use because that's part of your expenses. A common problem people run into is they're just forgetting a few expenses. They may think it's not important, but then they're scratching their head, why are they losing money or why are they in debt? If it's not accounted for in your budget, you still have to pay for it, and it can derail your whole plan. Once you have a list of every expense, you need to figure out how much each expense will cost. This will take a little bit of research. For example, health insurance costs may vary on your employer's benefits, so it's important to research this cost. And you should also consider how much you'll pay for groceries, for family outings, for car payments, and such. This is something people often forget, but you have to account for even the smallest expenses and think ahead of how they might change. So you just generally understand how much you're spending a month. And one helpful tip with that is if you're starting budgeting, just start looking at how much you're spending and what you're spending your money on. Take an average week in your life and count every dollar you spend. And then you'll see what you're roughly spending for in terms of goods, and then add that on to all of your loans and similar payments. And one thing you're really going to want to do is separate your wants and your needs in terms of your expenses. It's a fundamental principle is to account for your needs first, then account for your wants. So, in terms of needs versus wants, let's take this apple. You know, do you need the newest Apple phone or do you need a physical apple to eat so you don't starve? Um, Really, that should be something that you really consider, and that's where a lot of people fail. So mixing up this order can result in accumulation of debt, as the needs must be accounted for even if you do not have enough to cover them. So even if you go into debt meeting needs, that's better than going into debt and meeting wants and struggling to acquire needs and struggling with the debt. So it is important to pay needs first, then pay for wants. And there's a little bit of a helpful tool we'll provide for you to determine the difference between a need and a want.
So here are some common expenses you'll run into. Most expenses fit into one of the following categories. Housing. You need somewhere to sleep, and so that is definitely a need. Transportation. To live in the modern world, you need a car, you'll need some form of transportation, whether it be public or private. Food is obviously a need because you need to eat in order to live. Health, you have to make sure that you're well and you're not sick, so that's definitely a need. Technology, it is a want or a need. Like I said, you need a car to live in the modern world, so that is definitely a need. But for wants, such things as iPhones and expensive technologies are not necessary. Investments and savings. Savings are more on the needs side. Investments are more on the want side. Investments is what you go after you tackle your debts. Entertainment is definitely a want. That is something that is on the bottom of your list that you want to put your spare dollars into. Items are a want, but occasionally a need. Debt repayment is definitely the thing that you want to tackle. Once you have your debt figured out, that's when you can get into entertainment and investments and other technologies that you might want. So the way you base your budget is on a net income. So let's look at housing on the top left there. So you have to think about the monthly payments of homeowners association, rent, if that's what you want to go for instead of buying your house. Utilities and water bills are a need, and you definitely need to make sure you pay those. House maintenance, seasonal repairs, and remodels. Remodels are usually a want, something you do when you want to sell your house. Mortgage savings, money that you want to put aside to make sure that you pay off your house effectively. Seasonal house care, like lawns and making sure that you mow the lawn and keep your house nice, especially if there's a homeowners association. Transportation on the left there, you have to make sure that you pay off your car. Most of the time, I recommend that you don't have a car payment and just go ahead and buy a nice cheap car, something that has good mileage, so that way you can keep heading on the right path. Car insurance is something that you definitely need. Um, Gas is obviously a need. You'll have to make sure that your car has good gas mileage. Car maintenance and repairs and all stuff like that is self-explanatory. Public transportation. Um, Food, obviously a want. Items such as home goods, clothing, furniture, toiletries, technology like phone and TV, internet providers, online subscriptions. Some of these are wants, some of them are needs. Investing, that is something that you go after once you're done with your debt. And entertainment is definitely on the bottom of your list.
So while we may harp on all these needs versus wants, it's also to remember that we're human and we can have wants. So sometimes you will mess up and put a want in front of a need. Remind yourself that's okay. It's okay to treat yourself every once in a while. Don't make it a habit, but by all means, treat yourself every once in a while. That way you're not living in constant, you know, painful money limbo because you're beating yourself up over very small details, like one month you went over because you spent a couple nights out with friends. It's okay to do that. It's okay to miss your budget by a little bit occasionally. Don't make it a habit, but remember it's okay to have fun. So budgeting again is for different stages of life. Don't assume a budget you'll make right now will be applicable to you when you're 30 or when you're 60. Here's an example. When you're 22 or 25, student loan payments and car payments will maybe be your budgeting focus in terms of debt. But as you start getting rid of those car payments, as you move on to your later 20s, you can start looking at traveling alongside your student loan payments. Budgets must be adaptable. Don't think they're set in stone, and really a budget you can make right now can be different from a budget you'll make in a month because you may have new expenses in your life. You may have lost some expenses just due to you being wise with your money. It's all possibilities. So hopefully this will give you a little bit of an introduction to budgeting. In terms of budgeting, we will give you an example of a good spreadsheet located in another video of what a sample budget looks like. And you'll see that it's really just listing out every detail, accounting for its expense, and deducting it from your net income, and hopefully until every dollar is used up.